Welcome to the wild city of Anchorage. Like all urban jungles, this is a city plagued by thieves and petty crime. But here in Anchorage, the culprits aren't human, they are wild animals. This unique Arctic city is home to over 2,000 moose and hundreds of bears. And when spring comes, one animal arrives in its thousands. It's the salmon. In Anchorage, hundreds of fishermen descend for the famous salmon derby. But with the king salmon in town, it's not just the people who are out for a tasty catch. The brown bears have hit the city as well. With people and bears coming into contact more and more.
Leave the fish, leave the fish!
The hunt for food in Anchorage comes with high risk for everyone. With over 12,000 rivers, an abundance of fresh water is the life source of Alaska. During the winter, they will freeze to solid ice. But when spring comes, so does the great melt. The rivers start flowing, and Alaska's wildlife re-emerges. And there is one animal that relies on the river systems of Alaska more than any other. It's the salmon. Salmon will travel as much as 6,000 kilometers through rivers and streams as part of their migration, moving from freshwater streams to the open ocean and then back to their freshwater spawning grounds. Salmon are truly one of Alaska's hardiest residents. Using their muscular bodies, they can swim upstream, jumping over any obstacle that comes in their way. But there is one grisly hazard they face right at the end of their journey. It's the brown bears. Brown bears are the powerhouses of the bear world. These expert fishermen use skill and accuracy to grab onto the salmon with their powerful teeth. And after the harsh winter, this is a long-awaited, delicious meal for the bears. But it isn't just bears hunting salmon. People are too. With huge salmon right in the heart of the city, Anchorage is a hotspot for fishermen hoping to land a prize catch. But with around 60 brown bears roaming the city, also on the hunt for these urban fish, conflicts are on the increase.
He's looking at those fish right there.
But the fine summertime weather and fantastic fishing attracts not only locals, but also many tourists to Anchorage. So not everyone is aware of how to behave around these powerful predators.
Certainly living amongst the wildlife here, you have to have a bit of awareness and respect. You know, you give them their space if you're observing or you come across a witness, moose or a bear or something, give them their space, don't make them feel threatened or cornered. Generally on the trails here, we have a lot of wildlife encounters or interaction with large animals. But if you're acting in a responsible manner, there's typically not any issues, any danger.
But last year, one bear in particular became incredibly protective of its salmon fishing grounds.
So last year was a very good year for bear viewing. We had a lot of brown bears in the fall. So it was excellent bear viewing. Unfortunately, one of those bears did get a little defensive of its fishing grounds and bluff charged a few times, so the Rodak Nature Trail and the viewing decks had to be closed for a few weeks. There wasn't an incident, but it needed to be closed. And it wasn't an aggressive bear, it wasn't a problem bear, it was just being a bear defending its fishing grounds, that's all.
As the roads around Anchorage improve, it seems the interactions with wildlife are increasing, but not always in a good way for the animals.
Oh, great. How did this happen?
They're curious. They just want to see you.
And the last few summers, the Department of Transportation has improved the road coming out here. It used to be pretty horrendous. Now it's a nice, smooth road, so we inevitably, we're getting more and more traffic all the time because of that. So that is increasing the interaction with humans and wildlife, and especially along the road late in the evening. And fortunately, it's turning into kind of a circus, a bit of a show,
No. Oh my God, there's a bear on my car! Oh my gosh! Oh my God! Oh my God!
It's kind of a dangerous situation, and I think it's probably impeding the wildlife's traffic, the movements, things like that.
With an ever-increasing number of visitors unaware of how to act around powerful, wild animals and naive to the capabilities of an adult brown bear, it is increasingly important for Colin and his team to educate the public about the necessity of being bear-aware. Because whilst a brown bear may look docile when it starts running as fast as a racehorse, you don't want to be caught standing outside of your car. The return of the salmon in the summer months is of paramount importance to the people, the bears, and the wider ecosystem in and around Anchorage. So ensuring a strong annual salmon run is an essential job. But last year, salmon researchers noticed there was a huge drop in numbers across Alaska, discovering the female salmon had been infected by a deadly disease. If this fall was to continue, it would affect not just the residents of Anchorage, but the brown bears as well. Thankfully, one organization has made it their mission to fight this disease and make sure the salmon are around for generations to come.
The Cook Inlet Aquaculture Association was formed in 1976 with the purpose of enhancing salmon populations to provide additional fish for both the commercial and sport harvest.
But salmon have one of the most extreme migrations of any animal. So helping their survival means helping them at every stage of their life cycle.
What happens in the life cycle of salmon is they spend their time in freshwater up here in Alaska. They migrate as what's called a smolt to saltwater. They then spend 2 to 3 years in saltwater, and they can go all over the North Pacific Ocean.
But when Gary's team saw the huge drop in salmon numbers, they knew they had to do something, and fast. When the adults start to return, Gary and his team catch them as they swim upstream. They then weigh and measure them and monitor whether they are male or female. And because of the disease attacking the females, every single female salmon is injected with an antibiotic. Without these females, the salmon population of Anchorage would be decimated. To keep track of which fish survive all the way to their spawning grounds, each one is tagged before being released to continue its journey.
In Alaska, the salmon populations are regularly monitored. If the number is down, then harvest opportunities are restricted for both the commercial and sports fisheries. Our goal is to make sure that the wild system, or the natural stocks, are protected first.
But although Gary and his team can regulate the people fishing for the salmon, they can't protect them against their natural predators.
When you have large concentrations of fish in Alaska, you also have bears.
When spring arrives, the brown bears come out of hibernation with one thing on their mind: salmon. Brown bears are phenomenal predators and make catching slippery salmon look easy. They use their huge claws and speed to strike them as the salmon try to make it past. The bears need to eat 58,000 calories a day, which is the equivalent of almost 200 burgers, or for the bears, 16 salmon. So competition is fierce. And so you definitely don't want to get in the way of a bear and its dinner. But that's exactly what Gary's team have to do in their work to save the salmon. Working on the front line of salmon research comes with high risk.
We do have field crews that go out and spend a lot of time on the riverbanks. So our crews spend the night out on the stream bank actually counting the fish as they go out. Our crews frequently see bears when they're working out there and are trained to behave appropriately around bear populations so that we avoid any incidents with bears. Bears have priority.
But the risks that Gary and his team are taking have paid off, as so far in 2016, Anchorage has seen a record number of salmon arriving in the city. And this increase means there is one traditional Alaskan event that this year can go ahead: the Salmon Derby. Running every year for just 7 days, the Salmon Derby is one of America's biggest charity fundraising fishing competitions. Anglers travel from all over the world to join the residents of Anchorage to see if they can land the biggest king salmon of the week. But it's not just salmon that participants can net themselves. Before it all starts, Steve from the Fish and Wildlife Service has a very important job to do.
We're going to try to tag some king salmon for the Salmon King Salmon Derby that starts in a couple of days. So to attract anglers to come and participate, they give away prizes. There'll be a grand prize, and there's like $20,000 worth of prizes. But one way that makes it exciting is to have tagged fish in the river, and it gets pretty exciting when somebody catches those.
Heading out into the Cook Inlet, Steve and his team catch and tag the salmon. When released, they will have to run the gauntlet past the fishermen awaiting their arrival into town.
Our fishing crew yesterday, they tagged 8 fish in like an hour, and then we'll have a total of 15 tags out for the Derby and wait for them to get caught.
Whether young or old, everyone in Anchorage is out, as like the bears, catching salmon for their young, people here can feed their family for months on the salmon they catch. And last year's winner, Maria Robinson, loves nothing more than to try her luck at the Salmon Derby.
Every year I come down here, and when I get in my car to come here, I just get excited. Like, I don't know, a kid going out to play, I guess. The anticipation of having a fish on my line, and then the adrenaline that I get when I have a fish on my line is what I really love about fishing. It's fun even if you don't have a fish on, you're watching everyone else enjoy it, or you're netting a fish for someone else, or just a good time.
But as the 7 days pass, only 2 of Steve's tagged fish are caught. The grand prize-winning salmon has managed to slip away for this year. But the salmon's journey doesn't stop here. They may have escaped the fisherman's grasp, but they now have to try and get past the city's bears. With people, bears, and salmon all sharing the city, Sometimes the bears can get themselves into trouble when conflict occurs with their human neighbors. But help is at hand at Alaska's Conservation Center, where their mission is to help protect any injured or orphaned native animals. Scott Michaelis is in charge of looking after their resident brown bears.
Unfortunately, in Willow, Alaska, about 11 and a half years ago, there was a family that felt as though their children were in danger when an aggressive nuisance bear was starting to act very defensive in a neighborhood. And so unfortunately, they felt as though in defense of their family's lives that they needed to put this bear down.
Unfortunately, what the family hadn't realized was this bear was just doing what all good mothers do, and protecting her young from what she perceived as a threat.
So shortly after, the Department of Fish and Game was investigating, and they found 2 very small cubs up in a neighbor's tree. There was a tremendous amount of public support that ended up coming about, and Joe Boxer and Patron were deemed animals that could be saved if they could find a captive facility that could potentially take over their care.
And that's when the AWCC came to the rescue. They knew they had to help these 2 little cubs.
The Wildlife Center was in our infancy as a nonprofit, but we were able to provide the care for them here on our campus, and they've just recently now turned 12 years of age.
Thanks to the people of Anchorage and the Conservation Center, Joe Boxer and Padrone had been saved. Although Scott would love to release them back into the wild, here in Alaska, any rehabilitated bears have to be kept in captivity, and for good reason.
Unfortunately, because of their intelligence and because of the level of comfortability that bears will gain in captivity with humans, it's actually been made illegal to reintroduce bears back into the wild. So all of the resident bears on our campus will permanently stay at the Conservation Center.
The work of Scott and the Conservation Center is essential to the protection of the bears for generations to come. But sometimes it's the bears that feel threatened by us, a situation which can lead to dire consequences, even for the most experienced of Alaskans. In the autumn of 2015, Dan High was attacked and left for dead by a brown bear who mistook him for a threat. This is the very first time he's been able to relive and recount what happened that day.
Well, last September, I went out for my daily walk. I walked the neighbor's dog every day. And it was a beautiful Sunday afternoon, and probably went in about a half a mile. When I decided that was far enough, I turned around and started walking back, and I saw that Layla, the dog I was walking, was quite a ways behind me. She usually stays that way, and was barking. I looked over in the direction she was barking, and there were actually 2 bears there. Probably, I'm guessing, 4 or 5 years old. They were about 500-600 pounds, good sized. They weren't full adults. And the one bear was standing watching the dog bark, and I kind of assumed that the bear knew I was there, so I just kind of started waving my arms and yelling at it, trying to get it to run off.
But the bear hadn't seen Dan, and this sudden, startling movement frightened the bear, causing it to charge.
When he got, well, 2/3 of the way to me, I realized he wasn't going to stop.
But Dan is a man of the wild and knew exactly what to do.
So I got down in what's a football stance from 3 points so that I could at least take the hit a little better. He basically slammed right into me, knocked me over, actually knocked me out of the shoes I was wearing.
Despite his life-threatening injuries, Dan knew that to survive, he needed to play dead.
At that point, I went face down in the moss and covered the back of my head like I'd been taught to do. I just laid there, I played dead, and finally gave me one last jump on the back and walked off. I have no idea how long I laid there waiting for him to definitely get out of there. But when I finally did get up, I walked, taking it slow. I didn't have shoes. You know, I was bleeding out. I knew I was going into shock. So at that point, I sat down and took the cell phone out and finally got the phone on speaker and talked to the operator.
911, what's your emergency?
Hello. Hello. Bear attack.
Bear attack?
Bear attack.
Okay. Are you injured?
Yes.
Dan was several kilometers into the remote woodland, but within 10 minutes, the emergency medical services were able to locate him. He was then taken to hospital, where he finally received the help he needed.
And they put me back together.
But Dan's situation was a freak event. Even though he did exactly what he'd been taught, the bear still launched an attack. This bear had been surprised and had acted in defense.
I've been around bears my whole life, and I'm not really afraid of them. I respect them, and what happened was just a fluke. I don't blame the bear. You got to learn to live with them, because they're here.
As the summer draws to an end, the brown bears of Anchorage are making one final push to find food. And the salmon, who have put almost every last ounce of their energy into swimming upstream, finally make it back to their spawning grounds. This male is the first to arrive and will fight for a mating territory. When the females arrive, he will choose his mate, and as their final act, they will reproduce. This female lays between 2,000 and 10,000 eggs, which he fertilizes. Then, from pure exhaustion, these adult salmon, after the journey of a lifetime, will die. On average, only around 5 of the eggs laid will survive the full cycle to adulthood, where they will then have to endure the epic journey back to this very spot. For the bears, this huge salmon die-off is Alaska's final gift before the seasons change and the winter returns. And Alaska and its wildlife will sleep until spring arrives once more. Brown bears, salmon, and people have found the perfect balance for sharing their urban home. For the salmon, enough adults make it through the epic journey to their spawning grounds to reproduce, whilst the bears and people get the food they need to survive Alaska's harsh winter. And thanks to the people of Anchorage, the bears and salmon have found the protection they need to thrive for generations to come. But there are still risks involved in sharing your home with one of the planet's greatest predators. So caution is always needed, as another conflict could be just around the corner.